Welcome back to another edition of the Jacob Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Pear, joined by my co-host, Jacob Robom, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Peter Burns. Thank you for being with us today, Peter.
What's up, boys? Yeah, it's kind of a crazy time in our whole life, to say the least. So we're excited for sports to hopefully get back to where we got a lot more to talk about than everything that's going on in the world right now, to say the least, man.
Yeah, for sure. Peter is a host at the SEC Network, and he's an anchor, and he's also a host of various shows, and you can check him on the SEC Network during the college football season and postseason if you're looking for a little bit more insight. So, Peter, how did you get into broadcasting and journalism?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I had kind of a weird, unique path to get here. So instead of going through just, journalism school and going through school, and going to university like that, and then going to a bunch of different like television and radio markets, I actually worked in the gas and oil industry as a project manager right out of school. I was playing college golf, and I got a job with the good gas and oil company out of Texas. And I used to drive a lot throughout South Texas, and I just got bored. And so I started listening to sports talk radio, and then one year, one of the shows that I listened to, they had a contest to be a host for a day. And so I sent in my audition tape, and I ended up winning the contest, and it was crazy. So got to fly to Los Angeles, got to host Fox Sports Radio nationally for a morning, and I was smitten, man. I was like, holy hell, people get to do this for a living. This is the coolest thing ever. So after that opportunity, I was living in San Antonio at the time. I went to the local station in San Antonio and said, hey, I'll take any job you have. Just get me in the door. And they gave me a phone book and a little cube. And they said, go learn how to sell advertising. And maybe one of these days we'll put you on air. So, I sold advertising for about a year. And then sure enough, they gave me a little Sunday morning show, which led to a Monday through Friday show, which led to a national show, which led to living my dream job right now, being on television and radio.
Oh wow! I gotta ask though, college golfer, what were you shooting in college?
I was pretty good. I would shoot anywhere from 70 to 75, pretty much every round. And honestly, it wasn't until after I got out of college that I started playing really well and thought about playing professionally for a little bit. Then I realized after about a couple of weeks, I better actually do a job where I get paid real money. So those guys are too dang good. So I've shot 66 a couple of times and had some good rounds, but now with being a dad of two kids, I don't get a chance to play nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah, isn't golf just the best? You can play for life.
Oh, it's such a great learning tool too. And I tell people that it's like, no matter if you love the sport, like how often are you going to get the chance to sit next to people for 4.5 hours and really develop a relationship? And, some of the best relationships I've ever had, especially even in broadcasting, like Booger McFarland from Monday Night Football and former LSU Tiger, he's one of my best friends. And what's fun about that is that, we play golf every weekend. And so we end up having a good time and you get to know these guys a whole lot better. So even if you don't love golf, I would tell you to get involved with it because it's such a good connecting tool for business and your career going forward.
Yeah. So let's just get right into college football. Everything everyone loves. So with the upcoming season just around the corner, who are some of your Heisman favorites for the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think you start the Heisman, list of the guys that were pretty dang good last year, and that starts with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. I know that's kind of cliche, but they're just that good. I mean, Justin Fields was incredible last year when he transferred from Georgia to Ohio State, and Ryan Day did a good job of keeping him in that offense. So I don't see him missing a step, and he would probably be my front runner. Second is Trevor Lawrence, although I am interested because the news just came out that Justyn Ross, one of his star wide receivers, is going to be out for the year with the neck surgery. And, of course, he lost T. Higgins. So, that probably takes a little bit farther steps back for Trevor Lawrence. And remember, they got Travis Etienne still coming back, which is crazy. So I like those two guys would probably be the best. And one of the guys I really like, too, is Jamar Chase out of LSU. Wide receiver. He won the Biletnikoff Award last year. I think LSU's still going to pass the ball a whole heck of a lot. And I think he's just a dynamic kid that was already on a lot of people's radar. So Jamar Chase is probably going to be one of those guys on that Heisman short list as well.
You see Jamar Chase's numbers dropping from last season with Joe Burrow, or do you see them going up without Joe Burrow this season?
Yeah, I mean they're definitely going to drop a little bit because there's no way in hell LSU is able to put up those numbers, and a lot of it too because last year he had Justin Jefferson on the other side, and Justin Jefferson caught 110 passes out of the slot. So he doesn't have Justin Jefferson. He still has Terrence Marshall and some other wide receivers, but I think for Jamar, I would say that the amount of catches may be down, but touchdowns may stay the same for him. So I still think that he has a whole lot of success in that LSU offense. And it's a big year for LSU because, traditionally when they have won national titles, they've always kind of taken a good step back the next year. And, when I talked to Coach Ogeron last week, they want to make sure that they're just like Alabama in the fact that, hey, each and every year they compete for a title, not just kind of, hey, every once in a blue moon, they got a really good team.
Do you think Alabama's still the front runner in the SEC, or do you think that it's still LSU, like they can have another magical season?
Yeah, it's a great question. I still think it's Alabama, if for no other reason that they just continue to have – they just don't miss a beat. Even, last year was looked at as a bad year, and they had 2 losses.
Yeah, so
it wasn't like, they fell off the – they fell off the map there. So, I think Alabama is the team to beat in the SEC West. Now, I think the East is going to be really intriguing that – I really like Florida this year. Although I think Georgia has better athletes, I think the job that Dan Mullen has done coaching-wise is pretty solid. So I will tell you this, guys. I think this is as wide open that the SEC has been in maybe 2 decades, and that's good for the sport of college football.
Yeah. Would you say outside of Alabama and LSU, you see Florida as sort of that third team potentially competing for the SEC?
Yeah, it's a great question because I do think it is. I mean, I think that Florida is that team. Kyle Trask reminds me of a kid they had named Matt Flynn that played at LSU. And when Matt Flynn played at LSU, he was part of their 2007 national title team. And the thing that was cool about Matt Flynn is that he stayed there. Like, he thought about transferring, but he stayed until he had his 5th year. He was able to be a full-time starter, and they won the title that year. And that's kind of the same thing with Kyle Trask right now, is that he hasn't really gotten his opportunity, but he made the most of it last year when Felipe Franks got injured. And so, I do think that Trask is scheduled to have a good year. Plus, there was not a lot of coaching turnover at Florida as opposed to maybe Georgia and some other teams. So I think that helps, especially not having spring ball. All these coaches know each other. They communicate really well, and they're not really changing their scheme up. Whereas, I think LSU's changing some scheme up. I think even Georgia's changing some things, especially offensively.
Are you sticking with Florida? Are you on the Kyle Pitts hype train, or is it overrated?
Pitts is legit, man. I mean, again, every coach now is looks for mismatches, and last year Pitts was just a receiving nightmare. I mean, it's kind of like break in case of emergency. Anytime you needed a first down, you went to Pitts, and so he's kind of like Albert Okwuegbunam out of Missouri last year. That was really good. And so that was very interesting. And you go back and look, college steals from the NFL and NFL steals from college. And so I think the college game looked at how big a mismatch it was for NFL players on the tight end position. And now they're starting to utilize that. So that's why I think Pitts is going to have a breakout year, and it ultimately ends up being a big time NFL guy.
Well, Peter, after that answer, I got to say you are a smart guy.
That's good. In fact, my co-host Chris Doring was a former Florida Gator great, so he's always got me in a good mood in talking about the Florida Gators, to say the least.
So sticking with the SEC, obviously from Peter Burns SEC Network, who are some of the dark horse teams in the SEC that you could see maybe making a jump this year and nobody's expecting?
I really like – I mean, Tennessee ended the season in such a strong note last year. They have the second longest regular season winning streak right now in the country behind LSU. And they had a lot of good momentum on the recruiting trail. And they bring in back Jared Garantano. So I think they could be a team. And also Texas A&M. A&M's record wasn't great the last couple of years, but they were – Jimbo was just playing a bunch of new guys, trying to figure out what he had. They got Kellen Mond coming back. So – to me, it's both Texas A&M in the West, and it ends up being Tennessee in the East that I think are going to have really, I think, solid seasons.
With Jimbo not having a great first few seasons with Texas A&M, is he on the hot seat, or is that just not happening?
No, just because, I mean, that was the beauty of the deal that he signed. He signed a 10-year, $75 million deal, and there was no real job security. Now, by year 5 or 6, if they've struggled, hey, maybe they make a change. But, this was all, the last 2 years has honestly kind of gone according to plan to Jimbo. I mean, they would have liked to upset, Clemson and Alabama, but they were really working through their roster. And, it takes a coach about 2 to 3 years to get the guys that he wants in. And Jimbo's a hell of a recruiter. And the fact that he's got a bunch of young talent that played last year, he knew they were going to take their lumps. And now Kellen Mond's coming back. I think that they are poised to have a 10-win season. The question is that going to be good enough? Are they going to be able to upset an LSU or upset, an Alabama? That's the big question. I don't know if it's this year, but next year they're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, for sure. So sticking again with Texas A&M, do you see Texas A&M maybe having some of their players step up this season that didn't step up last season?
Yeah, I mean, they lose Matabuke, they lose a couple of players to transfer, but they had so much young talent, and I think that's the difference now. But I will tell you this: I do think it hurt A&M as much as anybody not having spring football.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many young guys looking to kind of build on momentum. Is that it's so important to have all those spring practices and a spring game, and they didn't get a chance to do that. So I think it stunts their growth a little bit. I mean, you go back and look at LSU. LSU won the national title last year in the spring.
Yeah.
They developed a brand new offense in the spring, and they were able to get it ready to go. They perfected it, and by the time the season came, no one was going to catch them. And all of that because of the hard work they had in the spring. So I do think it hurts Jimbo a little bit not having that those 20 some odd practices in the spring.
How significant is the loss of Joe Brady for LSU?
Yeah, it's a big loss, but the difference is that he was a scheme and idea guy. He didn't call all the plays, and so he helped LSU develop new plays. And it's not as if those plays will never be called again. Those plays are still there. They still have their same offensive coordinator, which is Steve Ensminger. He's still there. And now they bring in Scott Linehan, who used to be the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, and he had success as well too. So, I think everybody was just wowed by that because of Joe Burrow, but it definitely hurts losing Joe Burrow worse than it does to Joe Brady. But they'll be fine because Ensminger is going to take that same offensive game plan and kind of work it from there. And that was the good news about LSU last year, guys, is that they didn't have any ego at all. And the fact that they didn't care who got the credit was huge, and I think that's why they had so much success.
For sure.
And another team that lost their starting quarterback in the SEC, Georgia, obviously, Jake Fromm went to the draft and he's gone. How do you see their season going? Do you see a big drop-off for them, or do you see them sort of hovering around that 10-win mark again?
Yeah, I mean, it is probably the biggest unknown because defensively, they're going to be the best team in the country. I mean, there's no doubt about how good their defense is going to be. And remember, that's how Kirby Smart loves to win ball games. You go back and how he coached under Nick Saban. He's a bulldog at heart, man. He former linebacker, loves to play defense. And so the question mark is that Jamie Newman is the wide receiver transfer or the quarterback transfer from Wake Forest. They just don't know what he's going to be able to do. He put up some monster numbers against Wake Forest, but they play a little bit different in the ACC than they do in the SEC. SEC has a little bit more draft picks each and every year. So I think they're the big question mark this year. That's why I still think Florida is just more consistent. While the Georgia has more talent, I just don't know in that big game in Jacksonville if I think Dan Mullen's one of the best coaches in college football. That's why I've got Florida as just a little bit of a heads up over Georgia.
And what about Auburn, who also had a good year last year, and they competed in games with LSU and Alabama. And so how do you see them?
Yeah, Bo Nix was great as a freshman, or pretty good as a freshman, not great. The problem with Auburn is that what was great about Auburn every single year is they were always going to give you hell on the defensive front. And, when they lost Montrevious Adams and a couple other guys on that front, it's tough. because now you just don't have game breakers on to keep the game close. And so they're going to need a real big breakout from Gus Malzahn's offense along with Bo Nix. I don't think they get that, especially because the offensive line I have some question marks on. I still have them probably around the third or fourth best team in the SEC West, which still is probably good enough to be top 20, but in the SEC, it's so crazy how good these teams are right now. You got to be a little bit better than that. And I'm not sure if they have the depth right now that they need over in Auburn.
So, Peter, one last question before we let you go, because we know we have limited time. Will there be college football this fall?
Oh, yeah, there'll be college football this fall. I think it'll start on time. I think it'll look a little bit different as we won't have as many fans in the stadiums as we normally have. My biggest question now has shifted from will we have college football and will it start on time to really worrying about the back end of it. Is worried, hey, listen, if we do, once flu season starts propping up back in November and December, are we at danger of losing the end of the year? And that's the big question mark that I have. And that's why schools like Notre Dame and South Carolina have decided to change their Thanksgiving break and said, hey, once Thanksgiving is done, everybody stay home, because they don't want to see a big outbreak. So, I'm hoping we get a vaccine soon. I hope we do a lot more testing soon. And, God, I hope we get a whole college football into the season. We need it in our world, to say the least.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today, Peter.
You got it, boys. I appreciate the time and great questions, and hope to talk to you all soon.
Yeah, check Peter out on Twitter at Peter Burns, ESPN. Let's hope he's talking college football in the fall on SEC Network. Thank you for watching.